Good evening, everyone. My name is Chaim Nadich. I am the president of Concerned Citizens League. And on behalf of our organization, I'd like to welcome you to our seminar, A Conversation with the Protector of Poway, Oscar Stewart. So welcome and thank you for coming. Special welcome to our local law enforcement for coming. I know you guys are busy. Just want to personally thank you for all you do, and let's have a nice round of applause for law enforcement. That's our flag right there. Also, a special welcome to our viewers in attendance. We have close to 100 people signed up. I know people are straggling on, so I'd like to welcome you guys, as well as our SSOs in the audience. One second. Oh, I'm sorry. SSOs, they are the Shul Safety Officers. What is that? They're part of the Shul Safety Officer program. A few months ago, we developed a program over the last 2 years, and we released it the last couple months. And basically, it's select individuals in shuls who are recommended by the local rabbis to be part of this organization, part of this program. Basically, the first step is a vetting process, and then it's assuming they pass the vetting process. It's a year-long commitment. We train about once a month, total about 65 hours. Very rigorous training. Part of it is the medical emergency training, which obviously is critical. Greeter training, which we'll talk about later, as well as professional defensive training. So I'd like to thank them for everything what they do. So thank you guys. As I was saying, currently the SSO program is in 30 synagogues. Our plan is, God willing, by the end of next year, being 50. So if anyone knows anyone who might be interested in the program, who has a desire to help and is concerned about their synagogue as well as their extended synagogue family members, please go online and contact us that way. It's a commitment. Let's be real. It's a year-long commitment. It's very time-consuming. It's also financially, there's a financial part of it, which thank God to this day we're able to get funds from local people that kind of help subsidize the training. So we definitely are looking forward to additional members. So right now we're going to have a quick little discussion, Rena, with Oscar. After that, we're going to take an intermission. And the last part of our seminar is open to law enforcement as well as SSOs only, and there'll be a debriefing. Our debriefing will be by our Director of Community Safety and Security, Carmi Lawrence. Take a bow, please, Carmi. Thank you, Carmi. Carmi is basically going to debrief what happened. He's going to analyze it from the beginning to the end. What went right, what went wrong, what could be corrected, and God forbid if this happens again, what can somebody do to mitigate as best as they can. We recently had one of these debriefings with, I don't know if you heard, but on Devon, there was a synagogue that was attempted forced entry about 6 weeks ago. And we're fortunate enough to have the gentleman that was part of that right here, and Carmi did an excellent debriefing for us. And that is part of the SSO program as well. Really know a little bit more about someone's psychology and entering and how to prevent that. So that was and we're looking forward to this seminar as well. That concludes the SSO infomercial. I'd like to introduce our host, Irina Freeman-Watts. She is a questionnaire and a storyteller. She uses these skills as a podcast host on her show, Better Call Daddy. It's a podcast. She enjoys telling the stories that have not been told and sprinkling them with wisdom from her most trusted advisor, her father. Rena also runs the Megawatts Production, which is a full-service production house, which helps to take clients' visions from an idea all the way to full production for any platform. Also to our special guest, Oscar Stewart, that came all the way here from California just to talk to us. So thank you. The truth be known, he probably, I think he said he had a Simcha or something like that. But
my son's wedding.
Mazda. So we still appreciate your time, Oscar. So Oscar is a two-tour Army veteran and electrician by day. Thank you for service, Oscar. Thank you.
My honor.
Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rena Watts and Oscar, the Protector of Poway.
So I'd like to get started with a lot of people say that they would run into the line of fire, but you actually did that.
Yeah, yeah. So,
What is that like?
um, I really didn't think about it. It's I reacted, and I like to I like to emphasize that it was a reaction. I've talked to people about it, and you either have to be all in or you have to be all out. There's no half stepping. You have to do it. So the biggest thing I can, emphasize is that, try to get away. And if you're not going to get away, you got to do something. Don't just stand there and hide or cower because the outcome isn't going to be good. That's what my experience teaches me. So I engaged the individual. Um, and, I was lucky and, I overcame, I was able to put fear into him and he ran away. And that's what, that was my, thinking back, that was my intent, but I really didn't plan anything. You hear people say, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that. A lot of times all you can really depend on is your training and your experience. And because you want to, like, in the Army, they teach you to plan, train, train like you're going to fight like you trained. And that's what you're going to do. So I basically reacted the way I was trained. It was just instinctive. There was no thinking involved in any of it. I just did what I had to do. There was, as I got near him, I looked for a weapon, but there was no weapon. So I just kept using the weapons I had at hand. And I was intimidating. I presented a force that he was going to have to deal with. I didn't come up to him and say, stop that or please. I basically made threats, very boisterous threats. I used my voice from deep inside. There was no like you're going to offend anybody. You're going to yell and you're going to tell him that you're going to come hurt him, and that's what I did the entire time. That's what thinking back on, that's what I did, and and it worked. I mean, it probably helped that he didn't have any training, he didn't have any experience. So I override, but that's the biggest take is I can get from it is that you just have to present a strong force. You got to be a hard target. That's that was a catchphrase. You want to be the hardest target on the road. You want to be the hardest target walking through the city. You want to be the hardest target because then they'll think twice about attacking you. And he thought, in his reaction was, I'm out of here. He just, he had no more ammunition in his magazine. He tried to reload. I basically emphasized again that I'm going to hurt you if you don't get out of, and he just dropped his weapon to his side and he ran out the door.
And you yourself were not armed.
No, I was not armed. No, I wasn't armed. Like I said, I wanted to present a hard target. As I was running towards him, I looked for a fire extinguisher, someone's cane, anything, but I was not armed. No.
Why weren't you?
Well, I never, in my wildest dreams, I never thought I would have to be armed in a synagogue. It's a reality that we face today. I have a brother-in-law who lives in Israel, and he carries a pistol. And, there you think, okay, yeah, that's a logical course of events. I have to take my firearm to synagogue because some wacko may come in here. And I never thought that would happen here in the United States of America. And not even, I've done, a little bit of my military background. I've did services in foreign countries, and I didn't think I had to do it there either. It was just never, like I did Yom Kippur service in Saddam Hussein's palace in Baghdad, Rosh Hashanah in Tikrit in another palace, Seder's in tents in the middle of the desert, Pesach, and I never felt that I had to be armed. I had my weapon with me. We all did, but they weren't loaded. They weren't, it wasn't locked and loaded. There was a magazine probably in the well, but it wasn't locked and loaded. You never thought that you would have to react in that way in a situation like that.
Did you feel safe being Jewish in those places?
Yes, absolutely. I always, yeah.
Wow.
I never had any fear about being Jewish in those places. So I had an interpreter in Iraq, and he told me, he says, don't worry about the Arabs. They'll respect you, but worry about, he pointed to some Pakistani third country nationals. He says he didn't like them for whatever reason, so he said, but I I never hid that I was Jewish, and it never was an issue. I never, first country national, the Iraqis, they didn't look at me twice. They just, I guess they respected a strong image or a strong sense, or maybe the fact that I was carrying an M4 probably helped also. But I never felt fear in those places.
And so you were outwardly Jewish, and you were observant throughout your whole military stay?
I mean, as outwardly, as outwardly as the uniform will allow. I'm not gonna, I didn't walk around with tits hanging out or anything, but I had a kippah, or I'd have my headgear. It depends on what it is. So, in the event where I wasn't wearing my helmet or an outside cover, I would have a kippah on. But no one, people would notice it, but no one really thought twice. It's every once in a while you'd get somebody look at you like, wow, what's up with this guy or whatever. But it was mostly Americans. It wasn't the Iraqis. They just took it in stride.
That's really interesting. I'm also interested in, you've seen fire fight.
Yeah, many times. I'd say I'd taken fire at least 100 times when I was in Iraq. So, but that was part of it, and it wasn't like face-to-face fire. It was more like they were on the other, they were in the distance. You got contact from 2 o'clock. You look at 2 o'clock. There's nobody there. There's a building, so you return fire to the building. But you don't, it's not like they come out. They're not like we never faced a wave of someone charging at you. I never had to deal with that. There was a time in Ramadi where I did take fire from 2 guys, but I took care of them very quickly. They were eliminated very fast. It was so I didn't even think about it. It was like no big deal.
But have you seen people cowered out?
Oh yeah, I've seen people. Yeah, I've seen. We take fire, and you'll see. Like I said, you got to either be all in or get the hell out of there. So some of us would return fire. Others would get like behind the Humvee or whatever and put the rifle over the top and just start spraying. But you don't really think about that. You don't fault them. You don't know what you're going to do any 1 second of the day. You may react different the next time, or you may having a bad day or whatever. And your first instinct is to get down, and you got down. And some people's first instinct is to return fire, and that seems to be my instinct is to return fire. So
let's talk about Poway.
Okay.
And
yeah.
did you ever feel like you wanted to run too?
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned this a few times in other interviews. So the first thing I did, I heard the gunshots, and I'm like, that sounds like an M16. What the hell is that, right? It's a distinct, a 223 has a distinctive sound. And I'm like, I thought it was someone playing a prank for some reason. And then I look over and I see everybody running. So I'm like, my first thing is to follow the crowd. So I ran to the door, and this is where, you come to your moment of decision, but it was not a conscious decision. I look out the door, and maybe I saw kids out there. Who knows why I did it, but excuse me, I get really emotional about these things. So I just turned around, and then at that point I ran back away from the door, and I saw him like through the door of the sanctuary, and he was in the foyer there, and I yelled at him really loud and really forcefully, and I used obscenities, and he was like in shock. I saw his face. It was like, whoa, like a light turned on. It was like a different guy than the first guy I saw when I first saw him. He was like in shock. And as I'm running towards him, he picks up his rifle. He fires twice at me. What's funny is my mind didn't see that. I remember the interview I gave to the police officer afterward. I said, yeah, I saw the muzzle flash. He asked me, did you see him fire? I think that's a standard question. Did you see this guy fire? Because I wanted to make sure they had the right guy or whatever. And I said, yes, I saw 2 muzzle flashes. He fired down the hall. And then later on when I was in, no one told me anything, but later on when I'm in a preliminary hearing, I see the video, a security video, and he fired at me. But I didn't see the bullets but I did see the muzzle flashes come out of the rifle barrel. I remember that, the two muzzle flashes. And so I'm running towards him, and as I get closer, he's trying to change a magazine, And I told him, I used some more forceful words and a little bit more, anger. And he dropped, like I said, his weapon was on a tactical sling. He dropped his weapon to his side and ran out the front door. And I chased him out the front door. When he got in his car, he was fumbling for his keys or he was doing something. So I'm banging on the side of the window of the car because I'm going to get him out. That's in my, that's one thing I know. I was in my thought process. That's one thing I know for sure is that I was going to get him out. And so I'm trying to break the window, but I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have anything. So I'm hitting it with a fist. And I never realized how hard it is to break a window with your fist. You're watching TV and movies and stuff, that didn't happen. My hand just bounced off the window. And at this point, the off-duty Border Patrol agent yells behind me and says, "Clear out, fall back, I have a gun." And at that point, I fell behind the trunk of the car, and he fired 5 times, and he missed, but whatever. Maybe he was shooting at the car. I don't know what he was doing, but and then the guy sped off at this point. So at this point, between 3 people, we managed to get the license plate number. Somebody had a cell phone, and they called the police, and the police said, "We already have reports of him." He sped down the street, and he went about, I'd say, a 5-minute drive, 3-minute drive, and he called the police and gave up on it. He said, "At this point, I'm giving up." So I think at this point, his plan had fallen apart. His whole TV show, movie, video game idea was over. He realized that somebody's going to die. If it wasn't us trying to, because he already had 2 people trying to kill him, and we weren't even law enforcement. I think he realized that, this is over. I'm going to die. So he called the police on himself and gave up and was standing, from what I understand, he was standing outside his vehicle with his hands up when the police officer had arrived. The first unit arrived. He was a canine officer. I remember that.
Oh my God. What did you think when you heard that they got him?
Oh, I didn't know. See, so we hadn't gotten any information. The first thing that that happened after he left is I remember seeing someone shot. So I have like a knack. I don't know if it's training again. I see things that other people don't see. It's kind of creepy. I can see, like, if you drop a quarter, I'll see it, from across the room and stuff like that. Or if you drop a pen, I got a weird story. If you want to really hear, we'll go into it in a minute. We have time about my seeing stuff. So I saw the woman, Lori Kay, she was shot. I saw her laying on the ground. So I ran back and I started doing CPR. At this point, a doctor, Gil Furman, he's a retired neonatologist. He comes out and he's doing the compressions and I'm doing the breaths, and then he gets tired. So I'm doing both the compressions and the breaths. And this is going really quickly, because I think the time span, this is happening really fast. But I realized that as I'm doing the compressions, she was dead because there was no blood. And I'd seen plenty of people killed, and if there's no blood, they're dead. They died instantly. So, but I kept on doing it, for whatever reason. And then her husband comes out and takes over and doing the breaths, and I'm still doing the compressions. And then I think he says, "Let's try something else. Is there an AED?" And again, I see things. I said, "There's one on the wall." So I jump up and I go and grab the AED, and in reality, it wasn't going to help anyway because I think that just restarts your rhythm. It doesn't really restart your heart like on the paddles on TV. And so at this point, he realizes it's his wife. He lets out a groan and faints.
Oh my God.
And within like seconds after that, the police come in. The first 2 police officers come in. And so I immediately, I put up my arms because I took the pistol away from the Border Patrol agent. For some reason, I don't know, maybe I had more conscious of what to do than he did, maybe because if he's being law enforcement, you train for things, but I just took it away from him. And I set it on the ground next to me. And so when the police came in, I immediately stood up and put my hands up. And the police said, "What's going on?" And I said, "I'm trying to give her CPR." And then, somebody else told him what was going on. So we, they take everybody outside, and then somebody's looking for their daughter. So I go look for the daughter. And then I find my wife, and she's like, she's telling me what's going on. And she's happy. And she says, "I thought I was going to lose another husband." That's what she said to me. She's a widow, so from her first husband. So she said, I thought I was going to lose another husband. And then so we go back, and then they put us they send us immediately. They try to lock the place down in case he was coming back or whatever. So we end up in a Greek Orthodox church next door, and we're there, and then that's when I start hearing the spiritual side of things. So the priest comes out and he tells me, "I heard you." He said that he was having services because it was Greek Orthodox Easter was so because so it was off. It was like around the same Pesach time. It was the last day of Pesach. So he says, "Yeah, I heard you," and it sounded like three men. The boy, it didn't sound like one person. He said it sounded like three men. So immediately I thought of when you go to Sunday school, they teach you that the Egyptians were confounded by a great noise when they left Mitzrayim, when the Jews left Mitzrayim, and that's the first thing that came into my head. Is it wasn't me necessarily, it was a great noise.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really magnified.
Yeah, I'm kind of a spiritual person, and it just resonates with me. Maybe I didn't have any control in what I was doing. This was all the hand of God,
And meant to be.
and meant to be. Right. You think back to like, wow, why do things happen to you? So like, there was back to Iraq. It was one Rosh Chodesh, right? And we have to do extra prayers on Rosh Chodesh. We have to do Musaf and Hallel in the morning. And there was we had a convoy that day, and it was a pretty common practice to be the first convoy out of the fob, because IEDs never hit the first convoy. So we're like, they're like, "Hurry up, come on, you're praying," but I always had to do it. I had to put my tefillin on and do my my morning prayer. So this day I had to do a little bit extra, and so we end up like my sergeant, my platoon sergeant's like, "Man, we're gonna be late. We're not gonna be first," and they're all freaking out. People get really superstitious, especially in war. So we line up, and we're the second convoy there, and this is the creepy or mystical part. The first convoy was hit by IEDs as they went down. They were going to Baghdad, so on the road to Baghdad, they got hit by an IED. And I even saw the explosion in the distance. We were about, 3 miles behind them, and you see the size of the explosion.
Oh my God.
And I saw the explosion on the highway, and I'm like, oh my God. And so we get by the area when our convoy gets there, we just blaze through there. But you see burned out vehicles and people trying to, the ambulance and stuff was gone already, but you see the burned out vehicle there. So after that, my platoon sergeant, my captain, my first sergeant, they were all like, "Whatever you want to pray, you can pray." It's good. Do what you have to do. No problems. So, like I say, I think God puts you in positions, and He prepares you for these positions that you're going to be in. So I always felt that God was protecting me, and He showed me there that He was protecting me, and maybe this is the reason why I was meant to be there. I feel bad that one life was lost. But, the FBI kept reassuring me that I saved many lives that day.
What was it like talking to the FBI?
It was, to me, it wasn't that big of a deal, because I've been debriefed many times, like you always do after action reports in the military. So after, like I said, I've been engaged the enemy many times, engaged by the enemy, I should say. And so I was used to, answering questions and giving them as much detail as I had to give them. For lessons learned. We're gonna, what are we gonna do right the next time that we didn't do this time? And so it was very easy to speak to the FBI. And like I said, I have a very good memory, and I see a lot of details. So they were happy to talk to me, because I gave them really good details and a very good witness statement. They were like, "You were like spot on." Like, I remember the color of the car, I remember the make and model of the car, I remembered what he was wearing, I remembered his height, they asked me what was his ethnicity, and I said he looks like he could be, anything from the Mediterranean. He doesn't look like, like a Swedish guy, but he doesn't look like an Arab. He could be like Italian, Spanish. He could be Greek. He has that, that complexion, and his hair and his height, and he was wearing. I remembered everything. It was eerie or creepy, or maybe it was just cool or whatever, whatever you want to call it. But I had. So the FBI was very happy to speak to me, but I'd already given that information to the police officers prior to that, so it was I'd already gone through it a few times by this point.
Let's talk about too, like you had just moved to Poway, like this was your first Passover in the area.
Right, yeah, exactly. So that's another, a bizarre thing. So, I'd been involved with Chabad before as a kid. When I was growing up in San Antonio, there was a Chabad there, Rabbi Block was his name, and I would attend periodically. All the guys my age did, we'd go like, one weekend or twice a month we'd go to Chabad because it was cool. It was like a nice place to be. There was Chabad back in the 80s was a pretty cool place to go. So we would spend time between my synagogue, Rotve Shalom, and the Chabad. We'd go to both. On the weekend, we'd go do that on the Shabbat, for Shabbos. So I'd been involved in Chabad, and my wife had never. She's like from birth, grew up in Rogers Park, went to Ida Crown. She's like, a modern Orthodox girl. And I said, you're not gonna like Poway, you're not gonna like Chabad. But we were living in San Diego, and there's 2 synagogues there, Orthodox synagogues. One is in La Jolla, which is look up La Jolla price tags, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And then the other one was in the San Diego State area, and she didn't like it. And I said, she goes, is there any other synagogues? Well, I'm sure. I said, there's probably a Chabad somewhere. There's Chabad everywhere. So she says, okay. So she says, let's look at Poway. And I'm like, Poway, because my daughter, my stepdaughter, she went to a beauty school, basically, in Poway. So my wife had taken her a few times. She goes, I really like the neighborhood. I'm like, okay, so we'll look. So we looked around, and so around July, we purchased a house, and then we moved in August. So like I said, this was our first Passover in Poway. So we went to Chabad on Purim. I remember the first time, and my wife says, yeah, I like it. I'm like, what? You like it? I didn't think you were going to like this. This is like really not what you're used to. This is nothing like Kins or Torah. This is way different. But she said, I like it. If it's okay with you, I'd like to move here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm cool, whatever. I'm good with it. It doesn't, I'm very flexible and things like that. So we ended up there in Poway.
And that morning, didn't you ask her if you should?
Oh, yeah. So that's another thing. So the whole.
Be armed? Yeah,
the whole Pesach thing. So the night before, it was the last Seder, right? So there's this Hallel. There's Psalm 118. It talks, in English, it tells you that you'll be surrounded by bees and I will extinguish them. Like a fire extinguishes thorns. And, in my mind, I think about it, that's what it sounds like when you get shot at. When bullets whiz by your head, they sound like bees. It's not a bang. The bang happened a long time ago. It sounds like, like bees. And it just like, wow, it brought me to tears. And my wife's like, what in the hell is wrong with you? You're crying at the Seder. What's wrong with you? You've never done that before. And I said, I gave it up to, maybe I was thinking about my mom or maybe my dad. Or maybe the fact that I missed all my buddies from Skokie, or who knows? But I didn't. I just gave it up to something else. Maybe it was God telling me you're going to be okay, because So that morning I get up and I have a pistol. I own a pistol, and I said I'm going to take it to shul because I talked to the rabbi before, and he goes, yeah, bring your pistol. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. If you feel safe with a pistol, bring your pistol. And my wife's, no, you're going to get arrested. You're not supposed to be open carrying in California. I said, you can open carry in California. You just expect to be detained is what the Secretary of State says. But they're not, but the sheriff says that, I'm not going to stop you unless you're doing something wrong. If you're walking down the street, good on you, right? So she said, no, don't take your gun. People think you're crazy. And I'm like, okay. So I left my pistol at home that day. But, in the end, I didn't need it,
Do you think you would have handled yourself differently if you had it?
I probably would have done the same thing, but I think the outcome would have been different. Because, like I said, I have weapon discipline, so I wouldn't have just randomly pulled the trigger. I would have chose my target and engaged it. And when I was in Iraq, like I said, the times that I did actually see a target, I fired 6 shots and 5 hit. One particular instance, I didn't like empty a magazine. I took I aimed, I shot quickly, but I did what I was supposed to do. And that was a lot. That goes back to training. It wasn't just, train. So you don't waste your ammunition. I'm not gonna, empty 30 rounds or 20 rounds or 10 rounds or 8 or 9, whatever I have. I'm just gonna engage my target, probably fire 3, and if he's still, a threat, fire another 3. So I probably would have killed him.
What was that day like before the shots happened?
Oh, yeah. So
was that shul? Did they ever have any sort of
no
evacuation plan?
No, there was. When we go on to the next part of this, I will probably give more detail on that. But they were caught with their pants down. So, yeah, that's in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I don't want to point fingers or issue or fault or anything. It's just that, You know, things could have been done much different. Like goes back to being a hard target. You want to be a hard target. You don't want to be the soft target because there's so many synagogues in the area. There's a Reform synagogue, there's a conservative synagogue, and then there's Chabad of Poway. So on the way from where he lives in what's called Rancho Penasquitos, it's a community, a neighborhood of San Diego. He could have passed the other two synagogues on the way to Chabad. I'm not saying he did, but you know, I'm assuming that he did, and they were hard targets, and he went to find a soft target.
Had this synagogue ever had any other incidents?
No,
do you know?
I don't think so. Like I said, no one expected anything like this to ever happen. I think you know, that year was the year that Pittsburgh had happened, but I think everyone thought that was just a fluke. That was a crazy guy who lost his mind. You know, he was nuts. He was crazy. I don't think people are crazy. I think they do what they intend to do. They may be off the edge, and that'll give them the impetus to do it. But people are going to do what they're going to do, and you know, unfortunately, I've seen that. You know, you're like the fine line between insanity and rationale is easily. It's not, you know, it's there. It's easily crossed. So, I think this guy rationally decided to do what he did.
What was it like seeing him in court?
Oh, it was angering. You know, he was acting like this was a joke. He was giving hand signals to the deceased family, to Lori Kay's family. He's going over there, giving them the hang loose sign and just obnoxious things. And he's winking at me on the stand. You know, he was all smug and, you know, laying, you know, if I was in front of a judge, I would be on my best behavior. I mean, I would be top tall. He was laying back like this is no big deal. I'm not exactly sure what he was thinking. I can't imagine. I can't put myself into his mind because the guy's totally out of it. I would never be that person. So I can't imagine what he was thinking.
And how is it for you, like hearing from Lori's friends and family?
Oh, I was just upset. I was very upset. You know, it was, you know, my one regret is that I didn't save her life, that I didn't prevent her from being killed. You know, that was a big thing to me. You know, it was like, it weighed hard on me. It was like, I wish I could have been just more proactive or more, I would have done something different or done something sooner. You know, maybe I would have, but from what I understand, from the video footage, she was, as soon as he went in the door, he shot her. She was the first person killed. So she was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It's really hard.
Yeah, it is. It weighs on me periodically. You know, I think about, that's about the only thing that I, you know, like PTSD type thing. That's the only thing that really bothers me is that I didn't act differently prior to the whole incident. You know, the first thing I should have done, I didn't do. And that weighs on me sometimes, knowing what I know. You know, it's like, but that again goes back to maybe you never think that's going to happen in the United States. You never think that's going to happen to you at a religious service. So maybe that's why I said, oh, you know, I'm just being paranoid. Maybe I just got too much military paranoia going here. This is America. This is the 21st century. This is, you know, the land of the free, the home of the, you know, it's not, what do we have to worry about? This is the greatest country in the world that's treated us the greatest in history. So I don't have to, what are we worried about? Maybe that's not the case anymore.
Are you able to go to shul now and not
Oh,
worry?
yeah, absolutely. I go to shul. I don't worry. But it's a different mentality now. You know, we have at my synagogue, we have an armed guard. There's a couple of other people that are armed there. So, you know, and then we also take defensive measures. I think that's important to point out. You know, you don't want to be in the fight. You don't want the fight to come to you. You want to stop it before it happens. You know, like I said, you want to be the hard target. You don't want to be the convoy. This is back to Iraq. You don't want to be the convoy with the guy hanging out, looking at his iPhone or playing with a game. You want to be the guy with the rifles out, ready, locked, and loaded. You want to be that convoy. You want to be, you want to give, you know, your insurgent, well, I'm not going to hit that guy. I'm going to die. Because everybody in the end, no matter what, 99% of people don't want to die. So they're going to pick the next target, the next soft target. And you don't want to be the soft target. You want to be the hard target. So we've made it so that you're the hard target. And that's what you have to, unfortunately, that's what has to happen now.
What would you say your biggest lesson in all of this was?
Take things seriously. take this very, very seriously. This is going to happen. If you let it happen, it's going to happen. And you want to prevent it from happening, but if it doesn't, you got to be prepared to stop it as soon as possible. You want to limit the loss of life. You want to limit the injuries. You want to limit the effect it's going to have on people for life. You know, there was kids there, and I know they're not the same. You know, these kids are going to grow up, you know, for the next 50, 60, 70 years with different than they would have been. You know, I'm for sure I'm different now. And I mean, I got what, 30 years left on earth, and I'm for the next 30 years I'm going to see things differently. So you want to prevent that. You want to, you know, like what I said, you want to limit the loss. You want to mitigate it before it even happens. That's the lesson. You want to be the hardest target there is. You want to be, you know, you want to be the citadel. You don't want to be the shack. You know, you want to be, you don't want to be the little, you know, you don't want to be the three
sitting
little
duck.
Yeah, the sitting duck. You don't want to be the three little pigs. You want to be the brick house. You don't want to be the straw house, because the big bad wolf is out there.
Do you want to finish up and tell me the story about the pen? You were saying that there was a story.
Oh yeah. So I developed it. There's a pen. It wasn't a pen. It's a crazy thing. So when in Iraq, you know, I developed a sense. So one time we're driving down the freeway. I was in Fargo, North Dakota, and I'm driving. My son played hockey, and I tell my son, "There's your team's hockey bag on the side of the freeway." I'm going 70 miles an hour, driving down the freeway, and I saw the hockey bag on the side of the freeway. And he's like, "You are insane, Dad. There's no frickin' hockey bag." So I pull over, you know, get on the freeway, I jump out, and I go back and pick it up and throw it in the car. And then I give it to the kid who lost it, because it was from his hockey team. And he's like, "Where'd you find this?" I said, "On the side of the freeway." And everybody's like, "How in the heck did you see that?" And I just, you know, like I said, that's just something I developed. That's part of, you know, you get in a situation, you see things. I'm sure that the police officers here, they see things that you and I don't see. They see people acting erratically when they're driving. We don't see that. They're, you know, if you're a hunter, you see you see where the deer went. We don't see that because we're not hunters. You know, if you're a store owner, you see the guy come in and, you know, this guy's a little shady, so you're going to keep a little extra eye on him. You just develop that. That's just a vocation, you know.
Wow. Well, that is a beautiful story. And thank you for everything that you've done. And thank you for your service.
Oh, it was my honor. It was my honor to serve the country. And, you know, I tell people that, you know, that's my, you know, and I want people to know that we serve our country. So
Definitely. Thank you for running into the line of fire. I mean, that is,
like I said, I didn't
do
do anything conscious. It was just reaction, you know, and I'm sure that many people would do that. And, you know, I've served with people who would do that. You know, I can name 5, 6 people off of the top of my head right now who would probably do the same thing. So I'm not, you know, it's nothing special. It's just, I just did what I was placed to do. That's what I had to do.
Wow. Well, now we are going to get the security debrief from Carmi. And, okay,
Sure.
cool.
Yeah.
Chaim.
I'll let you call him out.
Thank you. What's your perspective as far as speaking to an audience here that obviously takes synagogue security seriously? What, if you have to give us one piece of advice, what would that be?
Don't let it happen. My biggest piece of advice is, you know, all the training is great, all the preparedness is great, but you want to be the hard target. You don't want the guy coming in the door. You don't want him to come in the door. You want to stop him in the parking lot. You want him to decide, you know what? This place is not the place I'm going to, because I'm not gonna succeed in what I want to do. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, I understand that, you know, it's great that we're going to be prepared, but you know what? Let's train for nothing. You want to train for nothing. That is what you want. You don't want to have to engage anyone. You want him to decide, I'm going someplace else. Because, you know, reality is, that day I reacted the way I did. Maybe tomorrow I may not. You know, you don't know what you're going to do until you're put in that position. Like I said, I've seen soldiers, you know, NCOs get down on the side of the back of a Humvee and just shoot over their head like that was their first day out of boot camp. You don't know what you're going to do. You know, you don't know how you're going to react until you're put in that position. And why chance it? You know, why take a chance? You want to stop it before it happens.
Follow-up question. You said something that there's one thing that you should have done. What was that?
I should have closed the door. When I arrived at the synagogue, the door was open, and it was held open by a planter. I closed the door, and yes, the entry door to the synagogue was open with a planter. I told my wife, "This is F and BS." You know, I don't know why. I was maybe paranoid or whatever from the whole Hallel thing the night before. I closed the door. Someone, I don't know who, came and opened the door again. And that's how he got in. That's how he gained access to the synagogue. Because if you see where he parked, he didn't stop in front of the synagogue. He drove past, realized that the door was open, and came out. I mean, you see the video from the preliminary hearing. We saw the camera video. It shows him driving past it, stopping, and then coming out. He didn't. So he probably, there's, like I said, there was an Orthodox synagogue, not an Orthodox, a Reformed and a Conservative, and they're on the way there from where he lived. If he took the route that I would have taken, he would have passed them both. And they're both fenced in. They're both locked doors. They're both, you know, a guy standing out there, you know, in a suit, not an, you know, one of them doesn't have a policeman there, but there's a guy standing there. You don't know, you know, so he went past that and he came to us. So like I said, that's what I would have, you know, I would have closed that door. I closed that door. I should have closed it again, but I didn't. You know, what's crazy is I left this out. I sat in the lobby for some reason. I was sitting in the lobby, and then Lori Kay, this lady, was killed. The rabbi was preparing himself for something, I think for Yitzker, and she went to talk to him, and I felt I shouldn't be intruding on their conversation. So I got up and I went inside. But, you know, in the back of my mind, I knew something was going to happen. You know, it's that maybe that's a gut instinct you get sometimes. If you know something's wrong, you can't ignore it. So I should have shut the door the second time. Any other? Go ahead. No, he didn't. He was just, he had the gun in he was wearing civilian clothes, and he had the pistol in his hand. And, you know, like, in my experience, when you engage somebody, you're not looking at them, you're looking at their weapon. You know, you want to keep an eye on that weapon. So if a policeman rolls up and there's this guy standing there with a gun, I don't know, in my mind, if I had been that, I would have said, there's a guy, there's the gun. So I asked him to give me the pistol, and he gave it to me. I mean, maybe I had an air of authority or something, so he gave it to me. It was a revolver, a Smith & Wesson, I think a Bodyguard, 5-shot. I took it and I put it down on the deck right next to me where I was. And I wasn't holding it, I left it on the deck, so anybody who saw the gun would see it, it was not going to harm anybody. And I think that's just from, you know, again, that's training. That wasn't like, you know, I'm a cool guy or anything. I just know that when I've been engaged in Iraq, you focus on the weapon, because that's what's going to hurt you. If a guy's 10 feet away from you and he's pointing a rifle at you, you're not looking at him, you're looking at where that rifle's pointing or that pistol's pointing. So if you see a pistol, you automatically focus on that pistol. So I took it away from him. I mean, I don't know if he had the training or he was just mesmerized by the whole situation. Like I said, I don't know how I would react tomorrow, but that day I reacted that way. And maybe that was his day to react like, I shot, what do I do now? So I just told him, give me the pistol, and he gave it to me.